Hello everyone. Tonight I wanted to tell you a story. This is a story that I told our swimmers tonight at the end of practice. When I was in college, I was training for and competing in open water swims, and I used to do some very long pool swims in preparation for some of these races. And sometimes I used to train with a friend of mine named Hal. Hal was in his mid-50s, and he would sometimes do these long pool swims with me in preparation for some races. And one of the races that he was preparing for was the Tampa Bay Marathon swim. This is a 24-mile swim in Tampa Bay, held every year in April. It's still going on. And Hal had attempted it 3 or 4 times and been unsuccessful, and had never made it more than about a third of the way through the race or so. And this is a race that usually takes the fastest people about 8 hours to do, and the slowest people maybe 12 to 13 hours to do. The slowest ones to complete it anyway. But Hal had attempted it several times, and one year he asked me to kayak for him. So I would paddle a kayak next to him all day in Tampa Bay. And what would happen is every 20 minutes or so he would get a feed, and I would hand him a Gatorade or food, whatever, for him to take a bite to eat. Well, so we went down for the race. We drove down about 2 hours from Gainesville to Tampa, stayed overnight, and the next morning the race started. And the thing about Tampa Bay is it's a bay, so it's connected to the Gulf of Mexico, which means you get salt water, plenty of waves, you get tides, you have wind. There's actually some major shipping some ships with containers on that go through there, so lots of things to watch out for. So it's important to have a kayaker to kind of guide you and feed you and all of that. Well, like I said, Hal had not completed this swim before. He had attempted it several times and not finished it. And this year I was kayaking for him. We started off the race, and the race was going quite well for the first couple hours. He'd stop and feed, swim. It was going well. And then around about 4 hours or so into the race, the tide, which had been at our backs and had been helping him, turned against him. So he was now swimming against the tide. And now, one of the keys to this race is you have to be able to swim faster than the tide, so that when the tide is going against you, you can still make forward progress. Well, Hal was just a little bit faster than the tide. So we were about 4 hours into the race or so, the tide turned against us, and now every 20 minutes we would probably cover about 200 yards of forward distance. And then as he would stop and take a drink, we would drift backwards that 200 yards. So basically every 20 minutes we'd be starting over where we were previous 20 minutes. So this went on for 3 or 4 cycles through our 20-minute feeding pattern, and Hal was starting to get discouraged. He's looking off the side, seeing the same building as he's swimming for an hour without stopping. Same building, just getting really, really down on himself. And when a 20-minute break came, I held up my paddle, which is our signal for him to stop and feed. And he came over to the kayak, and he said to me, at this point it had been about 5.5 hours in, Hal said, Ryan, I think I need to stop. I think I'm done. I'm going to quit. And up to this point, the longest he'd ever swim was about 5 hours in this race, and he was at 5.5 hours at this point. And I said, okay, Hal, well, you trained all this distance, you did all this work, we drove all the way down here, we stayed the night, we're out here working today, we're out here swimming. We didn't come all this way, and you didn't do all that to just go 5.5 hours, to just barely beat what you've done before. You can keep going, come on, let's keep going. And he did. He agreed to, and he kept going, and we kept drifting forward 200 and back 200, swimming forward, drifting back 200 every time, and that went on for another couple hours until the tide changed and it went behind us again, and it pushed him forward, and we started making good forward progress again. And that went on for several more hours. He covered quite a bit more distance, and about 11 hours or so into the race, the sun was starting to set. It was starting to get a little dark out there. His tempo was really starting to slow, and I eventually decided to make the decision as his support crew that he should probably stop. But he swam for 11 hours, 5.5 hours past when he thought that he needed to stop. And when I finally stopped him and told him that we needed to quit, he asked how long it had been, and when I told him it was 11 hours, he was just absolutely floored that it had been that long. So we did not finish the race that day. He made it twice as long in terms of time as he'd ever made it before, almost twice as long in terms of distance that he'd ever made it before in that race. And I think that he attempted it a few times after that. Still never completed the whole race, but made a valiant effort every time. But the moral of the story is that each of us is absolutely capable of far more than we think. Just when we think we've reached our limit, there is a whole other level to go to. There's way more that you can do. And you should never ever think that your limits are actually where you think they are. Your mind will quit way before your body does. Your body is capable of extraordinary things, but you have to get your mind to believe that, and you have to push yourself to that point and beyond what you perceive to be your limits. So I hope you enjoyed that story and hope you take something from that lesson. Thank you very much.